welcome everyone. Thank you for being live with us today. We're very excited to host this live call. And maybe some of you know Jo, maybe some of you know me, maybe some of you know both of us. But we wanted to get it started, kind of like introducing a bit ourselves and why we're doing this basically. Jo and I are joining forces on this now, but like 4 years ago, when also I had basically just joined iLindy, I was also kind of struggling with keeping consistency and motivation in my practice. I felt really alone. I didn't really have a group to practice together. I didn't really have a partner that was really available to practice with me. And I'm always really passionate. I love learning. I love developing new skills, but it was just hard keeping that commitment to myself when I didn't have anybody else who was looking out for that commitment, right? And then Jo had reached out to me saying that she was starting an accountability program. And I was like, okay, that sounds really interesting. And I actually didn't even know what accountability was or what it meant. And I even see like some of the people that are in this call were also in that accountability program many years ago. And it's really interesting because I actually made a lot of friends in that program that I still keep in touch with today. But basically, that was my first contact with this type of structure of learning how to set goals, how to turn those goals into actions, into smaller goals so that I can plan my practice week and I can have a goal that I'm working towards for different months. And I also had an accountability group, basically. So I had other people that knew about my commitment to practice. And if I felt like I was struggling with motivation or it was just hard to make the time, I had other people that I could reach out to for support. And that made like all the difference for me in learning how to better structure my goals and just my practice habits. It just really helped to shift my mindset, right? Because I had to pick one goal and I tried to work on that same goal for several weeks so I could actually start to see some progress in that. Like I needed to make sure that I was scheduling practice time ahead of time, that I had practice space. And I had also a WhatsApp group that Jo organized where I needed every week to state what my practice goals were. And so if I thought about skipping practice, I would feel like a certain, I'd say happy, healthy amount of guilt because I was like, oh no, other people know that I'm supposed to be practicing this. So they will know if I didn't practice, which is so different than when you're doing it by yourself, right? If nobody knows that you're supposed to practice and then you don't, it feels like, okay, nothing happened because nobody knew that was supposed to happen. But it is really frustrating when that starts to happen in a more consistent basis. So that was my first, let's say, deeper contact with the whole concept of accountability. And I've also done some private coaching with Jo that helped me so much in terms of how to set my goals and how to keep track of my goals, to see my progress in practicing. So I definitely say that in the last 4 years, working with her, I've been able to learn so much about how to build better, healthier, and more consistent practice habits. Which now that you learned from my perspective about having all this learning and process of growth, like I'd also love for Jo to also share your experience on why did you even decide to offer this type of coaching and this type of program for other dancers? Like, what was your experience in learning and then being able to offer this to other people?
Gabs, this is actually the first time I've gotten to hear this story, so I find that to be very, very charming. So, honestly, the accountability program was for me. So, despite how long I have been dancing and how long I had been dancing at that point, I still found it really difficult to stay motivated to practice when there wasn't a big event coming up. So maybe some of you relate to this. If so, if in the chat you can write yes, that would let us know if we're a little bit here on track. So, of course, that's the perfect recipe for feeling unprepared when competition season comes around, is when you're like, oh, yeah, yeah, I'll practice later, I'll practice later. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, it's like a couple weeks out. What do I do? And on top of that, perhaps you've also had a similar experience that I've had, where I find it easier to show up when other people are around than if I'm just being accountable for myself. So I kind of figured, well, if I build an accountability program, even if only a couple of people sign up, that will be enough to keep me on task. And then to have to be honest with myself and other people about why I'm not practicing. So that's what I did. I put an accountability program together because I needed it as much as everybody else did. So Gabs and I have spent a little bit of time this year talking about bringing this to iLindy. And even though iLindy has hundreds of videos on technique and breakdowns and stylings and drills and Charleston and all of it, we know that there's plenty of quality content, which we have. And we know that content isn't the issue, as probably all of you have more than enough content. But that's not the challenge. The challenge is actually practicing it. It's actually following through with it. And so because that's where people need support, we wanted to make sure that we could be of service. So if you find that that's true, as in you've got plenty of information but could use support, please write into the chat. So true. There were so many different options that I was going to choose there, but I figured that one's the smartest choice and easiest to type. So supporting our community through video was just the start, because we understood that we could be an even better resource, not by just creating more content, even though, oh my gosh, we have so much content coming, but by actually supporting our community by using what you guys already have. And so that's why we're bringing this program to iLindy, is that having access to great material means nothing if you're not showing up consistently to practice it. We know from experience, accountability is what turns I should practice into I actually practiced. So what I really love about Gabs' story is that we're trying to create that exact same framework. So not just me doing this by myself, but me connecting to our team of fabulous mega babes that are behind the machine and making sure that we can send that out. So we've gotten plenty of feedback from a number of dancers in our community saying they really, really enjoy the content, but gosh, they could really use some more support. So after all, this is what we're here for, is to make sure that our community feels supported in many capacities. And what better way to do that than on the internet? Of course, as all of us know who started the dance before the pandemic, online was a really, really great resource. But boy, dancing in public, dancing with people, being in our communities, like in real life, was really, really important. Now that I think we've had a couple of years being back with other people, I think a number of people have turned the corner again and felt like, okay, actually, maybe I've got a little bit more hunger, or I could use a little additional support than what I actually have access to in my community. What else would be possible? And so this is where the online community comes in, and we're really excited about that.
Yeah, totally. And I can add to that, like at iLindy, one of the things that I do most is like take care of the online community to check like the user experience and see every time how we can improve that. And one of the things that I do is track like every time that somebody cancels their subscription, I'm keeping track of the reason why they're canceling. And I'd say maybe half of the people is because they just don't make time for using the videos that they have access to. So I definitely see like on a weekly basis how many people are excited to get access to, knowledge and videos and just material for practicing, but then they just don't know how to actually organize their week and make sure that they stick to their commitment of practicing, which is also what kind of led us to decide to create this program as well, to be able to offer that support that people need to stay true to their goals.
All right, so while we switch over to the next slide, if you guys can type into the chat, what is the most challenging part about keeping your goals? So I'll say that one more time. In the chat, what is the most challenging thing about keeping your goals? You're welcome to write us an essay, but I don't think you have that much time. So if your fingers are available, we would love to have that information. Because for more or less, I think most of us are challenged for very similar reasons. And some of them, like, there'll probably be one or two of you that is an outlier, in which case then possibly like working with a coach would be the answer. But in general, I think many of us fall into the same thing. So staying motivated, preferring to play, energy, not knowing what steps to take. Ooh, space. Yep, that's a big one. Giving time to your students, not saving enough time for yourself, how to start. Oh, perfectionism. Yeah, I get that one.
That is a big one.
Laziness. Okay, well, we've got lots of stuff to mention about this. Work schedule. Okay, yeah, busyness, burnout, overwhelm. Oh my gosh, guys, you sound like you have such common experiences here. Thank you so much for sharing these. I know, right? This is exactly what this is. All right, so great.
Definitely.
So let's see. So, Sandra, great. We've already kind of chatted just a little bit about why we created the
Yeah.
accountability program. So why don't we go to the next slide as well?
Yes. And then I
Outstanding.
can
So,
take over.
yeah, cool. So, Gabs, why don't you take this one?
Yeah, so this is like a brief structure of what we want to cover in today's session so you know what's coming up and what we have planned for you. So, first of all, we're going to talk about two important pillars of growth, which are goal setting and progress tracking. That's pillar one. And then pillar two, that's accountability. We've briefly done an introduction about these topics, but we're just about to start going a bit deeper into that. And then we're actually going to do a live exercise with you so you don't have the excuses that you don't have time to do the exercise, because we're going to have a countdown timer here. So you actually have to do this live with us during the call, which is just learning how to set up a micro goal. And we're going to talk about what a micro goal is, what is a goal, what is a micro goal. But then you're actually going to get to do that exercise live with us. And then at the end, we're going to explain a little bit about the iLindy accountability program that we are launching today. That's hopefully going to be able to give you some support as well for your practice session.
So, goal setting and progress tracking. So, why many dancers fail is that they set destination goals, as in, like, I want to be great, versus directional goals. I want to work on my triple steps, or I want to be able to do Charleston at 250 beats per minute, something a little bit more concrete.
Exactly. So, and I think the tracking part is so important, at least for me, like, because otherwise you feel like you're practicing, even though you might have set a directional goal, like Jo mentioned. If you're not keeping track of your practice sessions, it's hard to see if you are making any improvements or not, right? We have that sometimes that perfectionist mindset, like somebody said, like you have too high expectations or you just expect yourself to succeed really fast. And then it's just hard if you don't have a way of measuring what you're doing practice by practice, week by week. So when you're able to find a way to keep track of your practice, then it gives it visibility, right? And if you can see that the work that you're doing is having some improvement, even if it's small improvements, then it just gives you more motivation and it just makes it easier for you to stick to your goal. And the way that you track can be different for different people. Maybe you're more of a taking notes kind of person. Maybe you're a spreadsheet kind of person. Maybe you're recording videos kind of person. I think it depends on your preference and your personalities. For me, for example, recording videos is the best way. I record videos every practice session. And then I look back and I see, okay, I like this, I don't like this, I want to improve that, and I want to improve that. And I will progressively record these videos, and when I go back a few weeks or a few months later, and I was like, wow, this thing that I was really struggling with, wow, now it just feels so much easier and it just looks so much better, even though sometimes from one practice to the next, maybe you don't see that much progress. But when you look back in weeks ago, then hopefully you'll be able to see some improvement. And it's a way that you can also just be more motivated to work on your own goals when you're able to see that.
So now let's go over to pillar two, the accountability. And this is really where the social secret is. Also, what a number of you mentioned as well is like, where is the accountability? So since we often do more for others or are held accountable because of others, we want to make sure that we involve other people in our progress. So how is it that we shift from a shame-based level of accountability to like, oh, I didn't do it, to a support-based one? The group is waiting for me. And so the success of how a lot of these programs work is if you're paying a coach, your coach will poke you to the agreed upon amount. Some people need a lot of poking and other people need less poking. And then in larger groups, how is it that we create the type of accountability that you're looking for that keeps you motivated? Again, there's a difference between shame-based and support-based. And some people want a little bit of that shame, and there's no reason to shame that. And other people are looking for just more cheerleading kind of support.
Yes. And I'd say before we go to the next section, which is
Mm.
kind of our exercise and giving some examples about how to set your goals, I do like one question that David asked in the chat about how do I overcome hating watching myself on video. I think that is a very relatable and common
It never goes
insecurity.
away. It never goes away. You just learn to tolerate the idea that you either get to be better or you get to stay the same. And so, which is the thing that you want more? Is to not watch yourself or to get better?
I love that. And I think something else that I've learned or that I kind of had to train myself to do throughout the years is that when I watch back a practice video, or well, I guess any dance video, right? It could be a competition, it could be a performance, whatever. I think we're so often able to identify our flaws so fast, and yet like it just takes us longer to actually find things that we appreciate, and hopefully you are able to find things that you already appreciate about your dancing, about yourself. So I'd say when looking at one of these like recorded videos, first look for the things that you like what are you doing well, or what did you like that you did? Was it an improvisation? Like, was it your posture? Was it your musicality? I think there's so elements to your dancing, like maybe you feel like you need to improve on your technique, or maybe the timing of your rhythms isn't so sharp, but hopefully you'll be able to be like, oh, but I actually like the smile that I have while I'm dancing, or maybe I like how I'm using my arms, or how my upper body is moving to this song. So I do feel like train yourself to first find at least one thing that you like about your dancing. And then you can be like, okay, I need to improve this. I need to improve this. I need to improve that. Like, don't be too hard on yourself. Like, please make sure that you're also celebrating the things that you already like before you go and make a list of all the flaws that you wish you can improve.
Kari, that is also a great suggestion, is to add a little bit of time in between watching videos. So just as a reminder, when you do film yourself, you also don't even have to watch them. Nobody's going to check your work unless you've requested somebody to. So if you also just want to start learning how to record yourself, make a plan to do so so you get used to using your camera, but you don't actually have to watch the videos. Sometimes just the act of trying to do something while you know you're recording gives you a little bit of additional pressure that you might not otherwise have. So that's a little tip. So why don't we keep going? Sandra, can you move to the next slide?
Yeah. Okay.
Outstanding. So
So
yeah, Gabs, let's go a little bit deeper. What you got for us?
yeah, so we're very soon gonna get to the part that you have to do some work. But first, I'm gonna explain the exercise, and I'm gonna share one example that I've created to share with you. And the idea is like Joe was mentioning, right? You don't want a goal that's too broad that you can't know how to measure if you're succeeding. Like, get better at dancing is not a very good goal because it's just very broad, and you will always want to be better. You know, whatever your level is, you always want to be better. So it just feels like too abstract. So you always be frustrated because then you always feel like you're not getting any closer. So it's important that we try to find a micro goal, right? So we're able to, from all the things that can make you a better dancer, maybe you choose one thing that you want to start focusing on. And that even within that, like maybe you're working on self-expression. Maybe you're working on some technique or learning new moves. Maybe you're working on your partner connection. Like those are all like sub titles, like from the bigger goal. And maybe you pick one, and inside that goal, you can even make an even smaller goal. So it's very easy to keep track of what you're doing. So that's the idea of creating a micro goal. So I'm going to give an example and also show how you could possibly help track it. So the idea is, instead of having something really big and broad, you make it into something that you can do on one practice session, right? So for example, maybe I have the goal that I'm preparing for a competition or something like that. And right now, I get really exhausted when I try to dance to faster speeds. So maybe one of my goals is I want to comfortably dance to 250 BPMs 3 months from now. Okay, so and who just happens to be iLindy, right, Joe? 3 months from now. So that seems
Very
like a good goal.
suspicious that things were scheduled exactly where they are, huh?
Yeah, very suspicious, and yeah, everything was thought, because that's actually one of my goals. So if I have 3 months and I want to be able to dance well at 250 BPMs. And I mean solo jazz, and I mean improvisation, because if I'm do the solo jazz competition, that's what I'm going to need. Then I have to break it down. Okay, how many weeks do I have by the end for when I want to achieve this goal? And then how can I set up goals for each week, so that I don't feel that in 1 week I have to already be dancing comfortably to 250 BPM, because that's probably not gonna happen. So I actually have two examples of how I could make this micro goal practice planning thing happen. So one of them, so I've tried to make a commitment to practice 3 times a week. So you can see that each week has now 3 practice sessions, which hopefully, who knows, I'll be able to complete or not. And then I don't want to just, like, if I'm practicing for an hour, I don't want to just be practicing at fast speeds for 1 hour, because that's not really realistic, especially if I'm just starting out. So I actually made a plan of, for part of my practice, I want to kind of start at a more comfortable BPM zone, which you can see it'll be changing as the weeks go, because hopefully I'll be more comfortable with faster speeds as my practice progresses. So if I'm working on a spotlight sequence, if I'm working on a cool new move, or if I'm just refining some technique, then this is the BPM zone that I'm going to try to work with. And then every practice session, I also want to challenge myself a little bit. So I want to go always a little bit out of my comfort zone, so I can start to slowly build up the practice of dancing faster and not being tired, and being able to do the moves with more precision. And then for just maybe the last bit of my practice session, I want to go over speed. So I want to practice just in a zone that's out of my comfort. Like, I'm not comfortable at all. Like, I'm gonna be struggling for the first few practice sessions, but it's gonna give me just input, right? And then often as well, when we practice just a little bit over what we're comfortable with, when we go back to this zone, it's gonna feel more comfortable, right? Because it was like, oh, the other one was so hard that now this feels okay. And then I created these little columns where I could be like, did I practice? Yes or no? In case I could say like, I missed the practice, something happened, that's fine. So I can keep track of how many times I'm practicing a week. Was I able to meet the goals? Like, was I able to do the speeds that I had planned? I can write down my feelings, like, oh, this felt okay, or I felt like I was really struggling, or there's this specific thing that I need to work more. So was I able to meet my weekly goal? And there's even a little spot for reflections that I might have during the practice sessions. So basically, I created this for the whole 3 months, so I could keep track of what I'm practicing. And I'm just gonna briefly, this is not the way, okay? This is a way that I found that can work. Another way, because you don't necessarily have to build up a consistency like this, but it doesn't have to be just building up a little bit week by week. You could have another plan, which is to start at a speed, and then you're always challenging yourself more, and you go higher up, and then you come down a little bit, and then you go higher up, and then you come down a little bit. So it would be, this is a very similar spreadsheet, but there will be more of a wave plan, so that you're going up and down as you're feeling comfortable, while this one is more of a steady plan, so you're building it slowly and steady, if that makes sense.
So, darlings, just because Gabs has done her spreadsheet this way doesn't mean that you need to do the same sort of thing. Ideally, and what we're going to be doing right now as we get started on an exercise for you all, is that we want you to figure out how to create SMART goals. And what is it that you're doing? How do we break it down into smaller steps? And can we make it achievable, certainly within a particular length of time? Very similarly, on top of that, you have to also figure out, do you actually want to do the goal enough that you will do the smaller steps that you have determined it takes? And is it worth your time and energy to do that? So there's a couple of little buy-ins that we have to go through. So I don't, Sandra, if you don't mind pulling up a timer for us, that would be really, really great. So, darlings,
And
if
the slides again.
yeah, I think Gabs, she has to do one and then the other because of technology. So, darlings, if you
Yeah.
are able to grab a piece of paper, or if you have a document open, or if you have like lipstick and you're going to write it on your arm, however you want to do this, please feel free. But basically, we want you to pick one skill that you would like to work on, and you're going to write down your ideal practice, as in like, what does this maybe look like? How many days a week is this? How long is this? Is it 30 minutes a day? Is it 1 hour? Like, how is it that you can build some consistency into your schedule? And then we also need to talk about an emergency practice, as in like, what's the bare minimum that you absolutely have to do? That in my case, how I look at that is, what would I laugh at? Like, yeah, what would it be if I laughed at myself that I didn't do it? So if it was a great example, and maybe this is from Atomic Habits, is basically like, if you want to build a push-up habit, what is the lowest number that you could give yourself to do that you'd feel like a tool for not doing it? So if you have to start with one push-up a day, but you absolutely will do one push-up every day, start there. You want the bar to be low enough that you absolutely can get over it to help you build the habit, because at the end of the day, we're not necessarily running towards goals. We are trying to create habits for ourselves that allow us to have the practice schedule that supports us becoming the person that we would like to be. All right, all right, all right. So that's a little bit of stuff. So let's get up, Sandra, why don't we grab up the, put up the PDF thing again, and then we're gonna start the timer. So darlings, we're gonna give you 5 minutes so that you can start this, and then we're gonna grab some of you and put you onto the hot seat if you are up for it, and then we're gonna help work these out with you. So if you're up for a little bit of a private lesson because you're willing to unmute yourself, we'll talk with a few of you, depending on how we're doing it with time. Okay, so cookies, you've got 5 minutes, pick a skill, and then we're going to try to make it into a measurable goal and try to figure out like, what does the practice look like? So SMART goals, I'll throw this into the chat, but otherwise take 5 minutes and let's see what it is that you're coming up with about what is a goal that you can break down. All right, darlings. So in the chat, if you can write in what your general headline would be, like what was the skill that you chose to work on? Variety, great. Tranky do, excellent. That's very specific. Oh, I like that a bunch of people are working on the Tranky do. How fun. Okay, clean footwork. Yay, Katie. Okay. Spins, timing, precision, general skills, Charleston. All right. Master the half break. Ooh, I love that. Okay, great posture. Okay, great. Some of these are wonderfully specific, and then some of these are a bit more general. Swivel styling, great. Full breaks, half breaks, more rhythms. Okay, this is great. Oh, big hearts to all of you too. Yes. Okay. Delightful. So, Gabs and I are gonna, or Gabs, if you've kind of read through this a little bit, and if you see somebody that you're like, "Ooh, I would love to chat with them," you are welcome to call out their names and pull them up. What I'm gonna say is this gives Gabs just a hot moment to get things together. Often when I am doing an accountability program or I'm doing one-on-one coaching with people, this tends to be the process as well, which is like, okay, let's talk about all of the things that you want to do. And we make a big list. And then we'll try to organize the list, which is like, all right, so what of these things are actually kind of the same thing? So if it ends up being a lot of jazz content or a lot of partnered content, that's a very easy way to divide things up. Quality of movement, that's something that you see in both as a solo dancer and a partner dancer. Fun fact, you as a partner dancer should still have a solo practice because you're in the partnership. Therefore, you should be investing in yourself because that's who you're bringing to the partnership. So how do you categorize these things? And then how is it that you make them even smaller? So how do you measure them? So something like, I would like to work on my arms, still a little bit broad, but we can get more specific. Like, is there a particular place that you're noticing where your arms are not necessarily working the way that you would like? And if you're like, oh, I actually don't know, but I've been told in general arms are important and I am aware that Lindy Hoppers don't use their arms super often, then it's like, great, let's take a look at a video of you and then we can kind of take an assessment from there. But if you have more specific things, like in Charleston, I notice when I'm transitioning between moves, my arms lose their flow. And like, why is this happening? That's now even more specific. Okay, I have said plenty. Gabs, hopefully that gave you enough time to
Yeah.
prepare. Great. So Gabs, why don't you take this
Yeah,
over and then I'll scroll through and find my person.
totally. Yeah, like that was really good insights, Joe. And I think a lot of people on the chat mentioned arms in general. So I feel like that can be a good example. So I'd like to ask Juanita, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, Juanita de Villana. You wrote a
You are
natural and
very correct.
intentional.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Natural and intentional arm movement. Do you want to share a little bit more about what do you mean by natural and intentional?
Yes. So in my case, I think I notice I never really move with intention on my left arm. And the second thing is when I say natural, that means like, sometimes when you go to classes, the teachers always say, make sure you involve your arms. Or let's say when you learn Charleston for the first time, squat Charleston, you do this and then you do this, or boogie, not boogie forward. Yes, boogie forward. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Joe, Joe does it perfectly. I love. I know that. I know that when I go to classes or I went to classes at the time, it's not the way my body moves, right? And at the same time, I don't have the time to or tools to really find out what does it mean by natural in my own body, or what does it mean by home in my own body, until I saw videos of Kanini and also went to her class. And that's the moment I'm like, oh wow, that's actually possible to really be at home with your own body, even though you go to workshop or classes with so many teachers, you can still know your home, because those teachers, even though they dance 20, 30 years, they have their own body movement, right? If you apply it to yourself, it's gonna be becoming performative. Or let's say if I go to Joe classes all the time, yes, I intentionally use my arms, but I look like Joe. I didn't look like Unita, when I move, and I don't
A
want that.
hundred percent.
Because yeah, that's
Yeah.
I think the thing that I struggled the most. And
Yeah.
I remembered I practiced last Sunday, I think, which is 3 days ago. I never really pay attention to my left arm. I ended up crying because
Oh
I was
no.
like, oh my God, that looks so jellyfish and looks so bad. So
Oh
so
no.
I think that's just, but it's a good healthy crying, I think. Sometimes I know people have issues with recording yourself or using mirror or really pay attention to yourself. But if we never confronted by the most uncomfortable part of ourselves, I think all the practices will be very abusive, self-abusive.
Yes.
It's like every
Yeah.
time you practice, you bashing yourself, or yes, you maybe you win a competition or whatever, but in a very unhealthy mindset. Yes.
Yeah. Wow, you had okay, you've made some really important points, and like I'm sure that other people that have mentioned struggling to improve maybe what they do with their arms, and I love everything that you said, and it's totally true. Like at least like for me as a teacher, when I'm teaching moves, I try the best that I can to give my student options so that they always know that they don't have to do the whole move exactly like I'm doing. They don't have to do the arms as I'm doing. I try to give them choices so they can also explore and experiment and see what they like more and what works best for their bodies. So I think that for you, now that you've been able to kind of better define what natural and what intentional means to you, and I think it's just trying to find your own personality, your own expression in the dance, and the way of moving that feels comfortable in your body. This is what I heard from what you were explaining. And I think one of the most important things for you is first exploration. So really just like put on any songs that inspire you, and it doesn't even always have to be jazz songs. I love like getting inspired by other types of music that just get me grooving. And really explore your arms. Like don't even think too much about steps or like moving around. Just explore the possibilities of what your arms can do. Like you can do up and down, you can do out and in, and you can do one side or the other. And maybe they can cross and they can open. And it can be one direction or the other direction. So there are a lot of, you can do circular movements or straight movements. You know, they can be more fluid or they can be less fluid. So there's just all of these different like qualities and textures that we can add to our arms, and we can try to follow the melody with our arms or just try this along. And this is a way that you just can explore the possibilities of your arms. So kind of it gives you more options and more possibilities. That would be, I guess, first step, kind of to reconcile yourself with your arm movement and finding out what feels good for you in the way that you move. And then I'd say that the next step was try to add this into, I guess, your solo dancing or your partner dancing, whatever your first priority is. So that would be, okay, let me maybe think of a simple step or a simple sequence. Like maybe if you're really familiar with the shim sham, maybe you just take the shim sham so you don't have to think about what moves you're doing. But then you're just practicing, how am I going to use my arms when I'm doing the shim sham, for example. And it's really about exploring and being like, I'm going to try this thing and I'm going to see if I like how it looks or if I like how it feels. Like it is really like that. And even in one of my recent practices last month, I even did an Instagram reel about this. I was doing this break and I hated how my arms move. So I just had a whole section of my practice, which was like, I was experimenting with different arms and I was trying out what I liked and what I didn't like about them until I found the arms that I liked for that specific variation from that specific sequence that I was doing. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to use the arms the same every time I do that move. But for that moment, that was the arm that I liked the more. But it took me time of exploring and trying and failing and then liking and not liking until I was able to get to a place that I liked. And now, if I end up doing this move again, then kind of my muscle memory will kind of try to be like, oh, we practiced this arm with this move. So maybe it will go there more easily without having to think too much. And maybe that's something that can make your movement more natural as well. Because like once you're able to practice different combinations, they'll be like, oh, maybe when I do the tacchianis, like there are just 3 different arms that I like to do when I do the tacchianis. And then when you practice them consistently and you build the muscle memory, like your body will just kind of have these options as a go-to when you're improvising with tacchianis, and you won't have to spend so much time having to direct your arms because they will be able to just move a little bit more freely. So yeah, I hope this was a bit helpful and that it's going to help you better plan and keep track of your goals for your arms.
Thank you so much, Gabs. That's very useful.
Thank you.
Gabs, I also love hearing you break this down because when we talk about our breakdowns for how we're training, it sounds a little bit different. So you need to, if I was going to give you a super short summary about how I think about it based on how my brain works, which is not how everybody's brain works, which means my system does not work for everybody, is that when I was learning how to use my arms, I realized I just didn't understand what pathways my arms could move. And when I would have dance teachers tell me, imagine, things that you do in real life, and we're just going to do that at a much larger level. I just remember thinking, I don't think I ever use my arms, which is obviously not true. But I was like, I can't imagine anything right now. So because for me, I need so much more structure when I get started, knowing that I'm a great learner. And I know that, and I've had to convince myself of that, but I know that, and I know that I can play once I have an idea about how to play. So I need a lot of structure for me to feel a sense of freedom. So when I was learning how to do this, because I love me a spreadsheet, I was like, how do I learn how to move my arms along the x-axis, along the y-axis, and how do I learn some level of rotation? And then I picked some jazz moves that I knew, and then I recorded myself doing each jazz move with a whole different range of arms and tried to figure out like which ones feel comfortable, because easy is different than necessarily the correct choice for your body. It's like easy tends to be what you've practiced most often. So if you start doing a range of things when you watch the video at some point, what is it that you actually like the look of? So even if it's not comfortable, you might be able to go, but I really like what that looks like. I'll train that. And as you slowly go through the vocabulary, that's how I did it. As I slowly went through my vocabulary, I started noticing trends about what looked good on my body based on my arm shape, based on my shoulder flexibility. And that's how I kind of figured out how I could dance for my body that worked that way. As I just was like, well, I don't even know who to look at based on what I want my arms to look like. And there's, because I also spend time watching other dance forms, and I'm like, well, I don't want to look like a whacker because that wasn't part of the style of the jazz vernacular. I would love that skill, and that skill is a great way to train your arms if you're also like, well, what could I do for a crash course? That would be a way. So anyways, you need that could be a way if you're like, I need a lot of structure, is like figure out how your arms move along an XY axis plus rotation, either from your joints, from your shoulder, from your elbow, and like from your wrists, and then figure out how to apply those like jazz step by jazz step. Okay, great. We've all now talked a lot about arms. So now I'm going to call somebody up. So Kari, if you're around and are able to bring yourself over, I noticed that you wrote down a bunch of things, which I think is why it makes you a great person to call up. So ladies and jelly spoons is a collective term once again. One of the things that I liked about what Kari wrote down is that there was spins, flexibility, speed, and balance. And what's very fun about that is many of us tend to have multifaceted goals. And so for this particular instance, how is it that we simplify at least one of them so that we know how to make headway? Because when we don't make enough progress on something, sometimes we feel a little bit defeated because our perfectionism comes out. And then it's just like, oh, well, if it's not going to be perfect, then I'm not going to do it, which I'll tell you, we don't really get very far if that's the attitude versus, you know what, I showed up today and that was the thing that's going to make tomorrow better. All right. So, Kari, do we have you nearby?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, excellent. Because I have forgotten how Zoom works. And so I'm just like, please help me. So anyways, Kari, I can't see your face, but I'm going to assume that you are nearby. Now, yes.
I
now
am nearby. And hopefully now that I've said a word, it'll come back. There you go.
Yes, we've now bounced to you and your fabulous hair. Okay, so Kari, like under 60 seconds, so we're gonna kind of keep this tight. How are you thinking about your goals? And let's kind of narrow down on one so that we can kind of get into the nitty gritty.
Sure. So I think that the overall answer to this is that I am looking at my body mechanics. I am looking at trying to make it so I have that performance quality that some people were talking about. But the ways that I know that I need to work on that specifically would probably fall into flexibility. And so my most recent goal is that flexibility one. And what I am trying to convince the rest of my dance scene to do is compete in mini challenges. So 2 months from now, roughly, is when we're going to have our splits competition. So I need to practice doing any amount of flexibility training so that maybe I can do the splits, but probably my students are going to show me up on that one. Juggling was last month. It was very fun. So we're doing things like that. So flexibility is what I'm working on, but spins is a drill that I know how to do. And that's one that I'm like, I know that if I worked on spins to one song every day, that would be a really good low entry point that I could definitely work on. So I added it. A lot of like Thomas, who is my primary dance partner, has been working on speed. And so I guess now I have to work on speed. And so that's an example of one that I have added to my repertoire because of that. And then balance. A year ago, I sprained my ankle really badly, and I'm over the injury now, but also I'm working on getting back some of my balance things that perhaps went away from that. And I think that my favorite dancing to watch is dancing that looks well balanced and energetic in that way, where they have a lot more control over their energy because of balance. And so that's one that I feel like I can work on as well. So those are all four of them. I know that you just said hone in on one, but I did not.
Absolutely. Okay, so then, Kari, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question. So if we go back to thinking about what a SMART goal is, which is specific, so it's clearly defined, it's measurable, so that you're able to track it, it's achievable, so it's actually realistic. So if you're like, I need to be able to put my leg behind my head so I can like lick my ankle in like 2 weeks, like that's probably not realistic. Relevant, make sure that it actually matters to you, because like that might be a great goal, but you might not need that for Charleston. And then time bound, so that we actually have a deadline. So, Kari, of those, which one of those do you feel like is maybe least in alignment with being a SMART goal?
For me, that's probably speed because it is a goal that I am doing for someone else. So it's like a little bit less of my goal, which makes it a little bit less within the realm of required for what I'm working on.
Outstanding. Okay, so then if we were going to just do a really quick little what's it about, then how is it that Thomas has defined that particular goal for him? Is there a particular speed? Is this with swing outs? Is this with kick steps?
I'm not 100% sure. Right now, when we practice it, we're practicing things from like Laura Glaze's videos, right? She's got a bunch of speed different exercises. And at Lindy Fest, I just took a class with Laura and AJ that was also on speed. So doing a lot of those different speed drills where you're just actively like bouncing on one foot, progressing tempos. We're trying to get up like so that things like Hell's a Poppin' tempo would feel comfortable instead of feeling frantic. And for me, I'm also trying to maintain triple steps at those tempos.
Okay,
Which
so
is
so
pretty
great.
hard.
So that actually does sound quite specific, is being able to do it both with kick steps and with triple steps. So how are you going to be measuring this? Is it that you're going to do something like what Gabs has done, which is like there's a spreadsheet and then you'll just write things in, or a notebook where you'll just be like, today this was like the max speed we could do and not look messy? Or is it just like we didn't fall over? How are you going to measure this?
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing with all of them is really that measurability. I recognize that all of them you can say like with the beats per minute, how fast did we actually achieve this? And when we bumped it back down, did it feel nice? And speed also I have some hangups about because I used to be pretty anemic and now I take iron pills and have hopefully fixed that problem. But I have a lot of mental blocks that I'm like, oh, fast dancing, I don't want to do that.
Okay, so that sounds like
So
also something to be worked through. Fabulous. So do you feel like it is achievable? Like, is this a realistic goal that you can hit?
I think so. It
Cool.
just
So
is a
we'll keep
matter
that.
of like what is exactly my timeline on it,
Sure.
which is
So,
big.
and it seems like it might be relevant. And so time bound, just as you said. So do you have a deadline so that you at least can measure the progress about how to check in? So like if right now you have a starting point of, I'm just making up this number, let's say it's 125 beats per minute, that in X amount of time you'll be, even if you don't hit your
Hope it's
goal
way
of
faster than that.
250, sure. That if you don't hit the goal by 250, that you are not a failure. However, it's just like, okay, cool. This is what my progress looked like over the time. So what would be a time that you could have a check-in with yourself, a milestone?
Uh, so that's what I really like about my flexibility goal is that I have convinced a couple of other people to do a check-in that is how close are we to the splits in a few months. And we have an actual date that is like when we're going to check that. And I haven't defined that for some of these other ones because I don't have like an upcoming event that I need to have this by. I'm just kind of like vaguely saying I would like to be better at this thing.
All right.
So
Well,
that's one of the things that I'm the worst at is setting a
so
time.
Kari, it sounds like once you can get a time frame on that, hopefully you can use this in students. This is also for you as well, is that it's not a measure of whether or not you're a success or a failure, but instead, how was the process? Was the amount of time that you gave yourself to create this habit with the amount of time you were able to commit to creating this? Was that reasonable? And if you notice that you need more time, outstanding, then that gives you a better sense on how to better achieve a very similar goal in the future instead of using it as a measuring stick to beat yourself with. So Kari, thank you so much for popping on. We are going to now kind of like round the corner here and get into the last little bit.
So now we're just gonna like present a little bit what is the iLindy accountability program and how it's gonna work. So basically, we're opening registrations today for our new iLindy accountability program, which registrations will be open until April 5th. And we start on the week of April 6th. That's going to be the first week of our accountability cycle. Okay. So this is a 3-month program. You can also choose to register for 6 if you feel very committed, or maybe 1 if you kind of want to see how it works and if it is for you or not. But basically, it's for dancers who want to practice more consistently, who are feeling stuck despite having some resources for practicing, who want more structure and less burnout, and who are willing to show up and be accountable for yourselves and for others. And what's going to happen is you're going to define a goal for your accountability cycle. And we're actually going to divide all the people that register into smaller groups so that you're going to be put in an accountability group with people that are working on a similar goal. So maybe some of you are working on quality of movement, for example. Maybe some of you are preparing for a competition or are working on your speed. Maybe you're preparing for a performance. So maybe you're working more in partner dancing. Maybe some of you are working more in solo jazz. So the idea is from everybody that's part of the program that you're also able to get more support from the people that have a similar goal. So you can be exchanging ideas and supporting each other. And what you get when you're part of this program, you get monthly accountability calls, which are every 2 weeks. So there are 2 calls every month. We go live. Hopefully you are able to join us live as much as possible, because it's where like the real conversations, Q&As, and accountability happens. If not, magic happens, exactly. But these are going to be recorded as well if you have to miss a week or something. And then we have progress tracking, which means that every week we're going to ask you to give us your progress. Okay, we're going to find a way to measure your goal. So every week you have to be checking in. Even if you weren't able to practice that week, you're still going to be able to you're still going to need to check in with us. So hopefully that'll add like a healthy amount of pressure to keeping to your goals. There's an educational integration. So if you also feel like you need more tools and more resources to practice, we have a big discount for you to join the iLindy subscription. So you have access to these videos, and now you have an accountability group to actually make your practice. And besides that, we're going to have a big masterclass on May 5th about how to practice. So it's going to be a big masterclass with Jo and me about how to like go more into details about how you do before your practice, during the first part of your practice, and just structure a little bit how to improve your practice session. And then
the important thing to know is that basically we're going to work on a 12-week cycle, so that we've got a prep week, we've got 10 weeks of focus work, and then we have a week of celebration, because honestly, we are not celebrating ourselves enough. And what better way to keep on top of your work than having people tell you how fucking awesome you are? So if you're not from the United States, just so you know, we do that in the United States often. It's one of the great things about the country, and we're not going to get too much into it. It's been rough, guys. So anyways, we want to make sure that we do have a celebration, just to make sure that you all feel really good about the work that you were able to get done, because it's not about the journey, it's about the destination. It's about the journey. That's what I meant. It is the journey, not the
it's the other way around.
Keep here, and we can keep scrolling, Gabs. Yeah.
But yeah, we start on April 6th, and then it ends, the 12th week ends around June 23rd, which will be our celebration for the first cycle. And then we have a 2 month break. If you want to join us again, we'll start cycle 2 on October 31st. And besides all of this, we're also going to have group practice sessions with special guests that we have joining us in the program. And that means that every week we will be announcing different days at different times because we have people from different time zones. They're gonna log in online. We go into a call and you're gonna work on your own thing, right? It's just like, okay, we come in, everybody states what they're gonna practice during that hour, and then everybody goes, does their own thing. You can keep your cameras on and off, however you feel comfortable. And then at the end, you come back and you check in with the group and you say, hey, this is what I accomplished in this hour. So that if you need this extra push to join us live, like you feel like you are with other people in the room and that you keep working concentrated for a full hour, then we're also going to be offering like different times every week. So hopefully that'll also help you with your accountability and motivation. And do you want to go with this one, Jo?
I think that they can read that, so you can keep on going.
Yeah,
If they're getting that far, they're
perfectly.
going to need that information.
Perfect.
I, yeah,
And
yeah.
yes. And
Bonuses,
we
they can
have
also, yeah.
exactly. Yeah, we just have a few bonuses. Like, so if you complete the full cycle, you get some extra presents, extra gifts, which is like, we just want to make sure that you have all the support and motivation needed with rewards and everything so that you follow through if you decide to sign up for the program, because that is our goal. We want you to stick to your goal and to your commitment to work on your own practice.
That's a great question. How long do you think it takes to get down the Lindy Hop basics? Well, dance E, as it's not clear what your background is. This is a little bit of a shot in the dark. So if you grew up in a family or in a community that had a lot of music playing and that it was quite common for people to move their bodies in rhythm, you would have a different adventure ahead of you than if you grew up in a musical desert like myself, and then didn't spend a lot of time around music until you were a fair bit older. If you also grew up in playing sports and being in a community where you spent time thinking about your body, learning how to move your body, building different types of coordination, you would have a very different experience than somebody who had spent a lot of time just maybe playing or like just sitting, maybe doing more computer work just because of how all of that tracks. And if you grew up playing or being in competitive sports, like fighting sports, depending on if you're doing like hand-to-hand combat stuff, you might actually have really, really great body skills, but then you might have to learn how to not hide your weight changes from your partner because they actually need to see your weight changes. So without having more information about what your background is, there's no quick answer. But what I will say, if you wanted to get a number, just so that you have something more specific, I would say give yourself 2 years. But I say that having learned other dance forms, and I still go to the beginner classes even after 2 years because of how valuable it is and because of how many of the basics I'm still working on, because the choreography is the easy part, it's the execution. Where I think generally Lindy Hop, depending on what scene you're in, I think sometimes there's a sense of like, oh, there's a 4-week beginner course, so I must be done with being a beginner in 4 weeks, versus maybe understanding the legacy and history that something like Lindy Hop has to offer in terms of the skill that goes behind it. And that said, like, one can do a lot with basics if you understand how incredibly powerful they are. So hopefully that's kind of a general answer with a little bit of specificity. All right, Gabs, is there something that you saw that you would like to answer?
Yeah, I thought KT Spray asking, I think, about the program. If I intend to sign up with a partner, do we sign up as one account or separate accounts? I'd say it depends if
Separate
both of you
accounts.
want yeah, like if both of you want the accountability, then you need to sign up with separate accounts so you can both participate. If this is something that you're doing like more for yourself, like I want to work on my own partner dancing and I want to do all the accountability calls and everything, but you kind of need a partner to practice because you want to work on your partner dancing, then you could just sign up for yourself. But I'd say it's more powerful if both of you sign up, because then both of you have access to all of the resources that we're going to be offering and all the accountability. So you also make sure that your partner stays as motivated as you to accomplish your goals.
So I have questions for both of you. what is one most common thing that people assume about your dance journey as a seasoned dancers? Because I think oftentimes when you dance above 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, or yeah, whatever years, people always assume that every time you encourage them to practice, at the back of their head, they will assume that, well, you are born that way, so that's why it's easier for you to practice. Or yeah, there's just like that, this one most common thing, so
You need to
what
just to
about?
make you need to just to make sure I got your question correctly. Did you ask what is the one thing someone assumes about your journey, your practice journey,
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah,
journey?
your
Okay,
practice
cool. I
journey.
just wanted to make
Yes,
sure I
true.
heard that.
Jo and Gab,
Thank you for
yes,
holding space for how my brain
yes.
works. Gabs, if you have an answer, you're welcome to do hop in.
Sure, yeah. Like I think it's very common, like when you see people performing or competing and like maybe they're doing well and maybe you see their like fancy social media clips that were recorded, like with a good lighting and good outfits. I think it's very easy to assume that it comes easy to them or they just have talent. Which is also why it, like in my personal Instagram account, like I love talking about practice and about the process, because I think that is such an important part. And I think for me, it's so important not to just show the perfectionist parts of what just looks really good, but I like showing the struggle as well of when I'm learning something new, when I'm practicing something new, when I'm not feeling that great about my practice, because that's super important to try to break a little bit this assumption that people have that things just come natural to some people when there's so much work that goes behind what we do. And I've even been doing some like practice videos where I write like you're working on your talent, to prove that it's not like if you have talent but you don't practice, there's only so much that you can grow. Like you just, if you just rely on your talent, someday like other people will be better than you. If you don't practice, other people will come and they will uplift, and then maybe you won't be so interesting anymore. So for me, enjoying practicing and always knowing that there's room to improve and there's room to grow and there's room to learn. Like I love learning. Like I love learning new things, new skills, new moves. And I think having that curiosity and that passion like keeps me inspired to always be going out of my comfort zone to go into a new skill or new move that I'm not comfortable with, that I'm struggling with, that I need to practice a lot of times in order to make it look effortless, right? So I think it's really important that people don't stay in this comfort zone and don't rely on their talent, and also don't make it seem like it's basically talent. Jo, I'm sure you have some insight as well.
Gabs, I think you knocked it out of the park opening with like a set. What are the set of assumptions? One of the things that I really wish I had understood when I started was that no two journeys were ever going to look alike. And when when the cultural values of the Black American community stays connected to Lindy Hop or to jazz or to any of the music and movement forms that they have created, that really holds space for individuality. And why I think that's really critical is that you're not looking to be a copy of somebody else. You're looking to be the best version of yourself. And that's the point of the art. That's why the form was created. And that's why it has continued to be so prolific year after year. So 100 years later, in Germany, people are still doing this and talking about this. And it's not just because people can memorize the correct thing to do. This isn't about being correct. It's about being authentic and dancing bravely and finding yourself in moments of struggle and being surrounded by community members that can hold you through the great moments and through the hard moments. And when we understand that the dance was created by a community of people who lived that, maybe not always by choice, but certainly systematically, that we understand that our values that we hold ourselves to ought to be in alignment with the cultural values, because otherwise we have decided that the cultural values don't matter. And I think depending on where somebody comes from, this either deeply resonates or this is a bit of a challenge. So that is a very broad statement, knowing that every culture, every ethnicity, every community member has a different background, and I certainly cannot speak to that for everybody. But I think the one thing that somebody assumes about one's journey is that to be perfect is the thing that we're striving for versus to be culturally competent. I think that's the thing that we're striving for, because art does not exist outside of culture. Art exists because of culture. And if you are going into somebody's form that comes with music and movement, how is it that we understand something about ourselves through the cultural lens at which we've entered into? And I think that there's so much power and grace and humanity when we think about the journey from that perspective versus the like, I just need to be good so that I can, I don't know, be listened to or be loved. And I understand that many people want to get good at something for a variety of reasons. And I'm not here to say that that's right nor wrong. However, I think when people assume that their journey is just about them instead of understanding that we are one of many, and so our journey hopefully can collectively impact people positively, maybe we would give ourselves more space and grace to learn as we are learning how to show up fully. Maybe we would extend that grace to others as well, knowing that we're all kind of just trying to do the best we can, considering how complicated the world can be. So if we have moments when we feel like, fuck, my arms just look like garbage, that it's just like, yeah, but you know what? I showed up today. And that's sometimes really fucking meaningful. So yeah, hopefully that helps. That might be a little bit much for this time of the evening, but if you're also in my time zone, you got it. All right, Connor, I see that you've been writing some good stuff. So I don't know, Gabs, if you want to hop in, if you've had a head start on reading some of this, but otherwise there we go. And again, guys, please feel free to stay, but you are not required to.
Yeah, I was actually reading Javanna that wrote first about how do you build the habit of practice of creativity and creating. That's such an interesting question. It got me thinking. And I'm gonna do a random recommendation. If you're able to listen to some Jacob Collier interview, I'm a big Jacob Collier fan. I don't know if you know him. He's an amazing musician and artist. And he has a lot of interesting interviews where he talks about creativity and creating a lot. And I've been able to take a lot of inspiration from him. But what I believe, like in my artistic creation, because I'm also like, I like experimenting with other artistic forms as well, such as poetry, for example. And I find that one of the essential things about creativity is just first, curiosity, like being curious about thinking about possibilities and exploration. And also just having this like, I think it's kind of like a childlike perspective, like when you're still really young and you don't have all these pressures of the outside world, you don't think about how productive or like how perfect you are, and you're just like genuinely interested in discovering possibilities in the things that you're learning. And I think that that's an essential element for creativity. Like you're not too concerned about the result. Like you're more focused on exploring the possibilities and just on that freedom of improvisation. So I feel like sometimes, I guess when I'm trying to work on creative things, like sometimes I need something that maybe will kind of be where my focus is, and I will explore from that. I'll take the creativity from that. So for example, it can be a song. Like I'm really into a song. It has this really cool riff, and this riff gets me really excited. And I'll just be interested in exploring what can I do with this riff? What are the steps? What are the rhythms? And that will make me try to think of creative solutions for how to interpret that with my body. Or it can be the creativity or inspiration could come from a vintage dancer. I watched this clip. I really like how they dance. I try the best that I can replicating that move with my body, but I don't stay in that layer. I'm going to be like, okay, now that I've learned this move from this dancer that I like, what else can I do with this move? Can I do it to the other side? Can I do it while traveling? Can I do it while I'm spinning? Can I go forward? Can I go backwards? Can I mix with this other move? Can I add some more rhythm? Can I do a variation? Can I change my arms? So I think a lot of my creative process comes from just thinking, what are all the things that I could do based on this one thing that really inspires me and that I enjoy. So hopefully that makes some sense.
All right. What is this? Connor. Okay, Connor, you have a lot of things. So one of the things that I think will resonate with other people is somebody who comes from, somebody who is in the perfectionist camp. Any tips are on on signs that it's time to leave a topic to rest for a while before coming back to it later. So often with the clients that I coach, one of the things that we talk through is like, what does a practice look like? And how do we think that we might sabotage ourselves in the process? And one of the things that often comes up when we talk about sabotage is feeling like we're going to get stuck. And so one of the ways to get through this is like, okay, so now, like, let's imagine you get stuck right now. Because you are not stuck, what does the best version of you do? Is it that you go, no, I'm not giving up, I'm going to keep working on this? Okay, great. How do you feel about that? Now, how will you give yourself space and grace? Because this now means you are borrowing time from some of the other requests that you had of yourself. And if that's the case, then that means that you want to just like check in with yourself and go, that is okay that I make that decision, and I am willing to basically take the time from these other challenges that I had set up for myself. And if you're like, actually, no, that's not going to be okay, then it's just like, all right, well, what is a concrete step that we can do? Is it setting a timer where it's just like, you've got 20 minutes with like a 3-minute buffer in between before you switch to like the next item, where you would otherwise like get water, go to the bathroom, like write notes? Like, how is that the buffer time? And like with that being set up into your training time, when you hit, let's say, that 20-minute mark, are you able to go, okay, I am not making the progress I want to make, but I've committed to the 20 minutes, so that's what I'm sticking to. So basically, Connor, I think the short answer is figure out how you're going to sabotage yourself, and what would be a way that you could splinter the sabotage, where it's just like there's a check-in moment where you're like, oh, okay, hold on, I have to make a decision. Do I just keep going, or do I pause and actually take stock? And at the end of the day, Connor, there's no correct answer about what you should do. But ideally, we are practicing with intention and purpose. And so at the end of the rehearsal, if you can leave with your head held high and you feel like, I did well, like I did the thing I came to do, I spent time moving my body and thinking about how do I want to show up to this music, if that's kind of like the overarching tenets that you're working within, then you can consider yourself having done a job well done. And I think that really comes down to what's most important. So it's not about doing something perfectly, because like the dance was not designed with the lens of perfection. That's very much like a white Eurocentric vision of what it's supposed to be, versus showing up and moving powerfully, dancing bravely, hearing something in the music that kept you curious. So as somebody who is a recovering perfectionist, I realize that I can't take that head on, but I can sidestep that monster by focusing my energy in on much more fruitful exercises or better adjectives that allow me to still feel pushed, but not strangled. So hopefully that's also helpful. And then for the group goal, I mean, let's just see if there's some other stuff that has come in. It looks like there's a bit of stuff. And then for a group goal, Connor, at some point, basically, like once a quarter or maybe once a month, that there is a check-in, which is like, hey, what are we working on collectively? And that's what we do all together. And then outside of that, we have individual time, so at least our bodies are in the same space. Like that might be an easy solution. And it could just be like, that's what happens at the beginning of every single practice, kind of like the same way that we're going to do with group practices through the accountability program, is that like in the middle of the week, we will have these sessions where you can sign on, and everybody at the very beginning says, here's what I'm going to work on, and then you go take care of yourself. So the idea is like there are times where we should be a group, but at the end of the day, we're all adults choosing to be here. And where is it that we're choosing to have our journeys intersect one another? And where is it that we understand that we have a personal responsibility to ourselves to show up powerfully for the community, which means this might be that time that we're spending going, okay, cool, my rhythm could use a little bit of work. Let me use this time wisely. Gabs, is there anything else that you would like to join? Otherwise, we should probably let the rest of the team go tonight.
Yes, I was just gonna make a small comment. Yeah, like I think it's important, like either like with yourself, like as a perfectionist, with yourself and with your team, to have clear like what the goal of the practice is. So for example, if it's a team routine, then what is the main goal of this routine? Like what are you trying to accomplish together? Like, do you want to be like really precise on your moves, or maybe you want to be more about what's the energy that you're putting into the routine? Maybe it's about like the expression or the musicality that you're putting in. Maybe it's more about the interaction of the team members and not so much about the precision of each step. So I think it's important that like if you're working with a group, that you can make clear at the beginning, like what is the common goal that the group has together. And then if individuals want to be more precise about their arm movement or things, like they can still work on that individually, but like that the goal for the group as a whole, like it's very clear, because I think lots of people will have different expectations. So I think it can be easy for somebody to be carried away and like want to be too long in a part of a step that maybe for the others it's not that important. So it's important to check in. How do you avoid in a practice session to end up just dancing and having fun instead of staying focused? The music always takes me away from focusing and thinking. That's really fun. I think you should still have fun while practicing, hopefully. I think that happens to me sometimes as well. I can get really carried away and excited about a song and then be like, wait, what was I supposed to be practicing anyway? So I think it's okay if that happens sometimes for some practice sessions or for a part of the practice session, because I think it's also important to kind of give in that kind of flow state that you can get into. But if you do have a specific goal that you're trying to work towards, then it's important that you try to like keep yourself focused on that goal. So I think like I'm a big fan of writing things down. You know, I have my like dancing notebook and I will write things down about my classes and my practice sessions. So if I have something specific that I'm working towards, I might try to write it down and then I'll make a note after I practice. So for me, just the fact that I wrote it down will already kind of help me to have it in mind as I'm having my practice session. And also planning the practice a bit ahead so that I have some structure and I have a little bit of a plan about what I'm going to do. So, and usually for me, like I have my warm up that I start with, and then usually I will take 1, 2, or 3 songs of just like improvising and moving around and just like getting the groove and getting inspired. So maybe that's kind of where this dancing and having fun creatively and like more loosely can happen. And then I will probably have something that I want to work on. It's a sequence that I'm practicing. Maybe I'm preparing a choreography to perform somewhere, or I've just seen a video that I really liked and I want to learn the choreography from that video. So I will kind of have something in mind that I can use as a plan, so that hopefully I don't just get carried away in the first part of the practice and I can actually get to the plan as well, so that I am working towards one of the goals that I have.
Gabs, I'm feeling like we've done a pretty solid job here tonight. Y'all, thank you so
Yeah.
much for coming to the session. And yeah, it's been a great amount of fun.
We will see you around in the accountability program or in one of the iLindy live sessions, because we have lots of exciting things coming up. Yeah. Last words,
And
Jo.
and with that, we wish you a good afternoon, a good morning, and a good evening, no matter where you are in the world. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us, and we hope to see you somewhere on the internet or IRL. Thanks, you guys.